Hi, thanks for joining me. I'm Jedi Master Josh. Today we're going to be talking about the explosive FISA memo that was released on Friday. It has caused people on the left side of the political spectrum, people in the media, the Democrats, to go absolutely insane, to say that it's endangering national security, to say that it's revealing classified information, that it's endangering, the intelligence community and the trust between the intelligence community and the intelligence committees that oversee them. They're basically coming out and saying that this is a terrible decision and that it's going to have some severe consequences, revealing this memo. People on the right are saying that this memo reveals the police state tactics that were being used by the Obama administration, and that it details corruption that goes all the way to the highest levels of the United States government. Well, I'm going to break down what's in the memo, and I'm going to go through it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and break down the key revelations that were, in fact, in the memo. But first, I want to go to a video from former Secret Service agent Dan Bongino and attorney Gail Trotter, who did an interview together on NRA TV, discussing the memo after it was recently released, and discussing the sort of legal avenues to actually surveil people in the United States, to surveil American citizens, and how that system was not implemented. So let's go to that video.
Yeah, well, you have a really terrific legal mind, being an accomplished attorney. And one of the things I've had a problem with the entire time with this ongoing scandal is people tend to get lost in the intricate web that's been weaved here, if that's a good way to describe it. There's just so many complexities to it that people forget what the bigger themes are. So sticking to the facts on this, I thought it would be good to lay out for our audience what the legal avenue to wiretap, spy, however you want to refer to it, what the legal avenue would be for the government to do that. You know, we defend on this network the Bill of Rights and the Constitution all the time. So I wanted to get your commentary on this. And me as a federal agent, I think you as an attorney, maybe we can enlighten them a bit. And correct me if I'm wrong at any time here, but there are two avenues to say spy on someone if there's a reasonable expectation of privacy, right, Gail? I mean, in other words, if we're surveilling someone working out in the gym, there's no expectation of privacy there, correct?
Exactly correct.
There are two specific avenues right now available to federal law enforcement to spy on communications where there is a reasonable expectation of privacy. The first, I think, is one you traditionally would be aware of, those of our viewers out there, which is the criminal route. And Gail, if you can just walk us through what happens there. You basically walk into a court as an agent and you swear to a set of facts to get a warrant, correct? And what's the element of the evidentiary standard you would have to meet for that?
Right, and that's one of the very basic rules of law that all citizens should know, and that one of the first things that they teach you in law school is that you have to be honest with the court. So you would go before a judge with basically documents saying why there's probable cause to investigate this person, that they think that the person might have committed a crime and that they have a reasonable basis for thinking that to start off the investigation. And that is a key civil liberty that we have under the Constitution and should be cherished by all Americans.
So we're going through the legal path. Path number one, which Gail and I just described. You suspect someone of criminal wrongdoing. You go to a court. You swear to evidence produced by surveillance, by whatever it may be, by another source you verified. That's the criminal path, to listen in on someone's conversations. There's another path. The other path is through the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Now, you still have to produce probable cause. The two components you have to produce, though, are probable cause that that person is acting on behalf, the person you want to surveil electronically is acting on behalf of a foreign agent, and there's probable cause they committed a crime.
So as you can see there, the two of them broke down quite succinctly the process to actually being able to spy on American citizens. You have to be able to, if you're going to be spying on people in a situation where there is no reasonable, expectation of privacy, like cell phone conversations, emails, something of that sort, you have to be able to you have to be able to go through one of two different avenues. You have to either be able to be able to either get a warrant, or you have to be able to prove that somebody is acting on behalf of a foreign agent to go in the counterintelligence route. The FBI decided to go down the counterintelligence route, and that's quite telling because they were not able to prove any sort of underlying crime. Well, this FISA memo that came out, the beginning of it sort of highlights the just overall broad abuses of the FISA court. And again, the FISA court is FISA itself is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and it allows for warrantless surveillance on American citizens if they are proven to, beyond a reasonable doubt, or that's the way it should be at least, to be acting on behalf of a foreign agent. Well, the FISA court is a small panel of judges that oversees the authorization of these FISA warrants, as they're known, to be able to spy on American citizens. Now, again, there doesn't have to be any underlying crime to get a FISA warrant. You just have to be able to show evidence that somebody is, again, acting on behalf of a foreign agent. Well, the memo begins by breaking down how that process of providing information to the court was abused, and how just in general the legal process was not followed in the proper way. We learn in the memo that on October 21st, 2016, there was a FISA warrant that was obtained by the FBI and DOJ. Now, it's worth noting that in July, reportedly, there was a FISA warrant in 2016 of July. July of 2016, rather, there was a FISA warrant that was denied by the FISA court. Now, that's very telling because the FISA court almost never actually denies an application. Something like less than 1 in 100 are actually denied by the FISA court. So it's very telling that they didn't feel that there was sufficient evidence to give them a FISA warrant in July, but in October it did go through. They were able to get the warrant. We also learned from the memo that a volunteer for the Trump campaign, someone by the name of George Papadopoulos, actually started the FBI counterintelligence investigation that started in July 2016. He was the reason that investigation started. The reason for that was because he met a Australian diplomat in a London bar and supposedly had conversations about Hillary Clinton's emails and the possibility of obtaining them from the Russians. Well, this investigation, this counterintelligence investigation that was started on the basis of the Papadopoulos meeting at a London bar, this counterintelligence investigation was headed up by a guy named Peter Strzok. Now, Peter Strzok is the now infamous FBI agent who was caught texting his FBI mistress, a woman by the name of Lisa Page, who herself is a liaison of sorts between the FBI and the DOJ throughout this whole process. Well, they were texting each other, these two star-crossed lovers, all sorts of things that showed a very clear anti-Trump bias. They were talking about how they hated Trump, how they hated Trump voters. They even went so far as to discuss having an insurance policy, quote unquote, against Trump and the possibility of his presidency. And again, this is the very FBI counterintelligence agent who is investigating Trump and actually basically it was again one of the main agents in the investigation, and it's very troubling, obviously, that he is expressing this level of anti-Trump bias and even going so far as to talk about setting up some sort of insurance policy against the president. Very, very, very troubling. In the memo, we find out that the FBI and DOJ obtained one FISA warrant in October and 3 renewals. Now, these renewals come in 90-day intervals. So after the first FISA warrant, it took 90 days, and then there was a renewal, and so on and so forth. Well, it turns out that James Comey, former FBI director, signed 3 of these warrants. More than likely the original one in October and 2 of the renewals. And FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe signed 1 of them. Then Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, and then Acting Deputy Attorney General Dana Bennett, as well as Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, all signed at least 1 for the DOJ side of things, because both the FBI and the DOJ have to basically sign off on these FISA applications. Well, in the memo, we know now that the dossier, this is something that was obviously speculated by a lot of people, that the dossier was essential for the FISA application, that there would not have been the FISA application if it was not for the dossier. Now, again, obviously the dossier is famously compiled by a contractor, a group called Fusion GPS, that provides opposition research. They were paid by Hillary Clinton and the DNC. And the information that they gathered, at least a good deal of it, was gathered from Russians, was gathered from current and former government officials and other people of influence in Russia that provided this information that proved to be salacious and unverified, as Comey was quoted himself in saying. And that information was also given to the FBI. And they wound up using that information, that false, salacious, and unverified information, to actually wind up getting a FISA warrant to spy on an American citizen. Very, very, very troubling stuff. We also find out that the FBI and the DOJ did not disclose to the FISA court while they were trying to get this application that the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC played a huge role in the dossier. So the FISA court did not know this. And you think that's something that the FISA court would want to know. Obviously, that the information that they're getting is funded by the opposition party of the opposing candidate running for president. Yeah, you'd think that'd be some information they would want to know. They also did not disclose that Bruce Orr, a high-level individual at the Department of Justice, knew that Christopher Steele, the former British spy who compiled much of the dossier, had an anti-Trump bias and was, quote, desperate that Trump not get elected and passionate about him not being president. Also not disclosed to the FISA court was the fact that Christopher Steele, had leaked to Yahoo News information about Carter Page and a trip, the now infamous trip that Carter Page took to Russia, which turned out to be, apparently, because at this point there is no information to suggest otherwise, none that is not salacious and unverified, it turns out that trip was quite innocuous, and this story that was leaked to Yahoo News basically turned out to be one of the key pieces of information that got the FISA application to be approved in the first place. And that's troubling because the FBI did not disclose, seemingly, possibly because they didn't know, but that doesn't necessarily make it better. They're supposed to verify these kinds of things. They did not tell the FISA court that Steele had in fact leaked that story to Yahoo News. And again, that story was very key to the FISA application being accepted by the FISA court. It was critical. We then find out that Christopher Steele had been terminated by the FBI as a source. Now, he got terminated because he proved to be unverified. Again, unreliable, rather, because he was doing things like leaking information to the media. He also, in a Mother Jones article in October 30th, according to the memo, he also leaked additional information that was shared to him by the FBI, which is another scandal in and of itself. The FBI was apparently sharing sensitive information with Fusion GPS via Christopher Steele. Well, it turns out that Bruce Orr wound up maintaining contact with Christopher Steele. Bruce Orr was, again, one of the high-level people in the Department of Justice. Even after the FBI terminated him as a source, Bruce Orr decided to maintain contact. Well, then it gets worse. Nellie Orr, his wife, this guy's wife begins to work with Fusion GPS during this time. And she not only is working with Fusion GPS, the wife of Bruce Orr, the high-level guy at the Department of Justice, she's not only working with Fusion GPS, she's working with Fusion GPS on the Russian case involving gathering dirt on President Trump, getting that dirt from the Russians, rather. So she's a part of this operation to get dirt paid for by the Democrats and Hillary Clinton on Trump. False and unverified and salacious information. The wife of a high-level deputy person in the Department of Justice is now funneling information, seemingly to her husband, as another form of him getting information after the FBI cut ties with Christopher Steele. And the memo continues to drop bombshell after bombshell. The dossier apparently was unverified. According to Bill Priestap, the head of the counterintelligence division of the FBI, an internal FBI review, which was done after Christopher Steele was cut off for being unreliable, and in James Comey's own June 2017 testimony, in which he called it, quote, salacious and unverified. Well, Andrew McCabe, apparently, the deputy director, who now had to step down, and we'll definitely get into that a little bit more in a bit. Andrew McCabe testified to the House Intel Committee on December 2017 that there would be no FISA warrant without the dossier. There would not, without this fake and unverified, salacious propaganda from the Russians paid for by the Democrats, there would be no FISA application to spy on an American citizen and a campaign, the candidate running for president of the opposing party. It's just insane. Absolutely insane. But apparently McCabe actually testified to that. The memo then at the very end, the very last sentence, apparently verifies the fact that Andy in the Stroke page text, these two star-crossed lovers, these FBI agents, Stroke being the main, one of the main counterintelligence agents investigating the Trump-Russia collusion fairy tale, apparently the text, the infamous text about an insurance policy, which was conducted with somebody named Andy, apparently this is something that everybody already thought was the case, but it's apparently verified now, is that Andy in that text was indeed Andrew McCabe, the deputy director. So you had Andrew McCabe, the deputy director, Peter Stroke, one of the top agents at the counterintelligence division of the FBI, and Lisa Page, his star-crossed lover, also an agent working with the FBI, a lawyer working with the FBI rather. These three all meet together apparently in private and talk about creating some sort of insurance policy against the candidate of the Republican Party running for president of the United States. That is something that should absolutely put a chill down the spine of every single American who has any sort of concern about civil liberties whatsoever. And yes, I'm looking at you liberals who are being just absolutely monstrous right now and tyrannical, and we'll get to that. Devin Nunes, the member of the House, the member of the Permanent Select Intel Committee, the member of the Gang of Eight, one of the great, I would say at this point, heroes in our government, somebody who is truly standing up to corruption at the highest levels, is the main person who put together this memo. Well, he is obviously getting heat from all directions, from the media, from the Democrats, from everywhere. Well, Devin Nunes came out and he said in a Fox News interview that this is actually just the beginning. That this is just the FISA court, the abuse that was done in regards to FISA and the FISA court, and that there is more to come. So let's play Nunes on Fox.
I've been saying this for a year now that there was no evidence of collusion.
Are there other
memos?
memos?
So now you fast forward.
Are there other memos
Brett.
that are going to come out? Are there other memos? You said this was phase one.
Yeah, so this completes just the FISA abuse portion of our investigation. We are in the middle of what I call phase 2 of our investigation, which involves other departments, specifically the State Department and some of the involvement that they had in this. That investigation is ongoing, and we continue to work towards finding answers and asking the right questions to try to get to the bottom of what exactly the State Department was up to in terms of this Russia investigation.
Quickly.
So as you can see there, Devin Nunes is saying that they're also going to be looking into potential abuses regarding the State Department, which would obviously implicate John Kerry. Well, now I want to go to a video of Representative Meadows, Mark Meadows, on Fox, saying that this is indeed just the tip of the iceberg. Let's play that clip.
Well, we haven't, Sean, and you've been covering this for many, many months. In fact, when everybody was criticizing you about what you believed to be going on, today we now know that indeed it was going on. And Sean, I can tell you probably the thing that concerns me the most is that this is the tip of the iceberg. We're already looking and reviewing other documents and other sources of information that would indicate other parts of collusion. And, you know, I can tell you there was no Russian collusion between this president and the Russians. But now what we're seeing is collusion actually did take place, but it was from the Hillary Clinton campaign and really trying to affect the election through this dossier that they paid for and was used to spy on American U.S. citizens.
So the Democrats and the media, as soon as this memo got released, the Democrats, the talking point was that Trump had betrayed the intelligence community and that they are revealing classified information and that we've endangered national security. They're saying that it's just horrible, so terrible that this memo got released, that we're actually shedding light on the corruption in our government. How dare Trump do such a thing? How dare Trump exercise his presidential, duties to, actually expose corruption at the highest levels of our government? How dare he? And immediately, one of the counterpoints that the Democrats were coming out with was supposedly this Democrat memo. So they're saying that, okay, you've got your memo, well, we've got our memo too. You see, you look here, we've got a memo too. And it's interesting to note the double standard in the media, which was illustrated quite well by Slate. So Slate came out and put the headline saying, "Survival at all costs. By releasing the Nunes memo, Trump betrayed the intelligence community to save his own skin." And at around that same time, Slate then comes out with another article with the headline that says, "Release the second memo. How Democrats should respond to the release of classified Nunes talking points." So apparently, if it's betraying the intelligence community and just trying to save his own skin by releasing this memo, and they're so concerned about releasing classified information. But when it comes to the Democrat memo, which, as we'll get to here in a little bit, has some issues of its own in terms of sources and methods and classified information being released publicly, they're apparently just fine with it. So that's the double standard at work in the media, the liberal media. And then we go to The Hill, which highlights the fact that the FBI condemns Nunes' memo for, quote, omissions, escalating feud, saying, quote, "With regard to the House Intelligence Committee's memorandum, the FBI was provided a limited opportunity to review this memo the day before the committee voted to release it. The FBI statement said, as expressed during our initial review, we have grave concerns about material omissions of fact that fundamentally impact the memo's accuracy. Senior Justice Department officials, including Wray and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, have lobbied both the committee and the White House against the release of the document." So, what you got here is, the Democrats and media saying that you shouldn't have, released the document. It's bad. It's, revealing classified information and all this other stuff. You've got apparently the FBI even coming out. And, when they say the FBI, this is high-level people in the FBI. People like the FBI Director Christopher Wray, and in the Department of Justice, people like Rod Rosenstein, high-level people. The rank-and-file people at the FBI and the Department of Justice. Many of them are probably disgusted about what's going on right now, and they actually want to see justice. It's the people that are implicated. I mean, I'll have you know, Peter Strzok, the guy who was sending all these texts about insurance policies against the president, had this clear bias, everything. He's still working at the FBI. A lot of these people who are probably going to be implicated are still working at the FBI at the highest levels. So, of course, they're going to come out and obviously this is just going to be troubling for these, agencies departments of government anyways, because it's going to be, a situation where people are seeing them exposed for, for what they are, at least to an extent when it comes to the highest levels. There's some serious corruption going on. And of course they don't want that coming out because it's going to, harm their reputations. And one of the big Democrat talking points is that Nunes hasn't seen the underlying intelligence. So that's one of the big Democrat talking points, that Devin Nunes hasn't actually seen all the underlying intelligence and that he's just cherry-picking this information. Well, let's go to a video of Representative Nunes himself discussing that claim and talking about the material omissions in the document and the underlying intelligence. Let's play that video.
Did you read the actual FISA applications?
No, I didn't. And this has been one of these bogus news stories that have been put out. So the agreement we made with the Department of Justice was to create a reading room and allow one member and two investigators to go over and review the documents. I thought the best person on our committee would be the chairman of the Oversight Committee, Trey Gowdy, who has a long career as a federal prosecutor, to go and do this. And then they, over a series of meetings, would come back with their notes and brief the rest of the committee members.
Democrats are criticizing a lot, as you can imagine. I'm sure you've heard, but they're jumping on one particular part of the memo in particular. The number 4, the memo states that then Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, quote, testified before the committee in December 2017 that no surveillance warrant would have been sought from the FISA court without the Steele dossier information. Democrats say he never said that, did he?
Yeah. I mean, it's a summation of a long interview, and that is definitely what he said. Not to mention, we have other witnesses who said very similar things. So the fact of the matter is, the main things that were used to go out and get this warrant was the dossier and the story that corroborated the dossier.
So why not
and then
put McCabe's quote in there or release the transcript?
Well, that would be a whole process that we'd have to go through. Actually, the quotes, I think, are pretty damning themselves. So I wouldn't mind doing that, but we would have to go through a whole process to release transcripts.
So clearly, as far as the material omissions, you're talking about, thousands of pages of documents and information being condensed, just the pertinent facts being put in it. And as far as the underlying intelligence, again, as he stated there, you make a agreement with the Department of Justice to do these sorts of things, and the agreement that they made was to have Congressman Trey Gowdy actually be one of the people that saw the underlying intelligence, not Representative Devin Nunes. So that is just a faulty talking point from the Democrats. Now let's go to a video of Representative John Ratcliffe, who is another one of just a handful of members of Congress who have seen the underlying intelligence. Let's go on him. Let's go to a video of him talking about the Democrat memo and the underlying intelligence. Let's play that.
Yeah, I think transcripts of witness interviews, those can be redacted and made public. I think the Democrat memo, the minority memo, ought to be made public too. I will tell you, having read that, Adam Schiff drafted that, and it's chock full of sources and methods. So it's going to have to be heavily redacted before it's made available to the public.
So that does have the sources and methods that they complained about getting compromised. That's interesting.
It does. I will say this about the underlying documents that I've been able to review. It's hard to take 4 phone books worth of information and distill it down to 4 pages. So I think it's fair when the FBI director says not every material fact is included. I think that's a fair criticism. But as someone that has reviewed the underlying documents, the story ends the same way.
Okay, but are you taking things out of context?
So as you can see there, he says that you're talking about 4 phone books worth of information being condensed into 4 pages. Obviously, there's going to be some material omissions, but he says clearly the story still ends the same. He's also in support of the Democrat memo coming out, and the White House actually came out. A White House spokesman came out on CNN and said that they too are in favor of the Democrat memo coming out. Let's play that video.
Out front tonight, White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah. And Raj, thank you for your time tonight. There is a lot of fear in Washington that the president is gearing up to fire the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. As you've heard, Raj, the president was asked about it today, and I want to play again for you what he said.
Are you more likely to fire Rosenstein? Do you still have confidence? evidence and have your reading.
You figure that one out.
You figure that one out. That is far from a denial, Raj.
Aaron, thanks a lot for having me on. Look, on the Deputy Attorney General, there's been no change in the President's confidence in the DAG. We continue to expect him to fill his role as the Deputy Attorney General, and we don't expect any changes on that front.
So why, when the President was asked if he was likely to fire him, didn't he say, do you still have confidence? He didn't say what you said. He said, you figure that one out. Why didn't he just come out and say what you said?
Sure. Well, I'm saying it on behalf of the White House, and that's that, no changes are going to be made at the Department of Justice. We fully expect Rod Rosenstein to continue on as the Deputy Attorney General.
So when it comes to the memo, I'm holding it here. Of course, we all now have read it many times. The President said that what happened here was terrible, a disgrace, to use the words that he used today. If what Rod Rosenstein did, as alleged in this memo, merits those words from the President of the United States, then why not fire him, Raj? I mean, unless you all guys are going to admit this entire memo is a political document and nothing more.
Let me step back and look at some of the contents of the memo. I think the primary charge is that in the heart of a political campaign, the Department of Justice and the FBI relied upon opposition research with really limited credibility to apply for a FISA warrant, and it did not tell the judge about the political leanings and the funding of that document. We think that that is relevant. We think that the public has a right to know about it.
Now, of course, the Democrats dispute that. They say that the judge was made aware of that. This is a big question.
I don't have a copy of the FISA warrant itself, but what we have is the memo that was submitted by the House of Representatives. There's a process. The House Intelligence Committee voted out this specific memo with the information in it. We thought it raised questions. The President believed that the public had the right to know about what was in it, and so he ordered it declassified. But we're going to continue to be open to other documents, other things that are relevant to this matter and others that the House Intelligence Committee chooses to vote out.
So this is crucial, Raj, because this obviously to release this Republican memo was done 100% on party lines. The Democrats want to release their memo as well. And when you point out to the FISA warrant itself, it would seem that if such serious allegations are being made about it, that the American public should be allowed to see all of it. The Democratic memo, the intelligence behind upon which both partisan documents are based. The Democrat in the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, talked about that today, and here's what he said.
I think the president would be hard-pressed to try to suppress this memo, particularly since they claim they're releasing the GOP memo in the interest of transparency.
Raj, will the president support that, the release of the Democratic memo and the release of the underlying intelligence, including the FISA warrant itself?
Well, the President and the White House has stated that we would be open to consider anything the House Intelligence Committee chooses to vote out. This is the Republican Speaker of the House has talked about and read the Schiff memo that he was just talking about and supports its release. We'll consider it. We'd consider anything, another piece of information. The President will run it through the same process, which is to have national security and legal equities throughout the agencies and within the White House review the material, ensure that it doesn't endanger national security, that its disclosure would not reveal sources and methods. But once we run through that process, and if the House Intelligence Committee were to vote out that memo, he would consider it just as he considered the Nunes memo.
The only thing...
So the fact that the FISA application, that a main piece of the investigation into Trump-Russia collusion is based on a dossier that is salacious and unverified provided by the Russians and paid for by the Democrats is obviously very troubling. And then basically there would not be a special counsel. We wouldn't have almost certainly gotten to this point if there wouldn't have been the Russian dossier. So it's leading a lot of people to say that should the Mueller investigation, the special counsel investigation, be shut down. Now I want to go to a video of Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch, talking about the Mueller investigation and whether or not it should be shut down.
The dossier is central to the Russia collusion theory targeting Trump, and that's the basis for the appointment of Robert Mueller. So you've got the corruption associated with the FISA surveillance, you've got the corruption associated with the FBI and DOJ working hand in glove with the Clinton campaign to push this narrative beginning in the summer of 2016, and it all led to the appointment of Robert Mueller. There is no Russia collusion story without the dossier, and we now know and have confirmed 6 ways to Sunday there was nothing behind it. So therefore, why is there a special counsel investigation?
So as you can see there very clearly, Tom Fitton is definitely in favor of the investigation being shut down on the premise that it is based on faulty, phony grounds. And I tend to agree with that. Now here is Representative Jim Jordan giving a bit of a different take, saying that we need a second special counsel to investigate the current special counsel. Let's play that video.
What's the next step in terms of if we want to right this tremendous injustice and constitutional violation?
The thing Mark and I and several other members called for 6 months ago, a second special counsel. We know Mueller can't expand his probe. He's inherently compromised on this. We know Jeff Sessions has recused himself. The only remedy, and I wish this wasn't the case. I'm not a big fan of special counsels, but I see no other remedy than a second special counsel. And I'd add one thing. Make sure they're not from the swamp. Make sure it's some retired federal judge from Iowa or Oklahoma or somewhere. Pick someone who come in and look at this entire situation so the American people can once again have confidence in the top people running these important agencies in our government.
So another talking point about the memo is that Democrats are saying that the FISA court actually knew about the Fusion GPS and Clinton DNC connection. And also that Andrew McCabe, and they're also saying that Andrew McCabe did not testify that the dossier was essential to the to getting the FISA application. Well, Representative Lee Zeldin came out with a tweet that said that quite clearly Andrew McCabe was indeed recorded saying this, and we also have a video of Devin Nunes on Fox saying that indeed Andrew McCabe was recorded saying this. Let's play that video.
Democrats are criticizing a lot, as you can imagine. I'm sure you've heard, but they're jumping on one particular part of the memo in particular. The number 4, the memo states that then Deputy Director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, quote, testified before the committee in December 2017 that no surveillance warrant would have been sought from the FISA court without the Steele dossier information. Democrats say he never said that, did he?
Yeah. I mean, it's a summation of a long interview, and that is definitely what he said. Not to mention, we have other witnesses who said very similar things. So the fact of the matter is, the main things that were used to go out and get this warrant was the dossier and the story that corroborated the dossier.
So why not put
passed
McCabe's quote in there or release the transcript?
Well, that would be a whole process that we'd have to go through. Actually, the quotes, I think, are pretty damning themselves. So I wouldn't mind doing that, but we would have to go through a whole process to release transcripts.
So it's hard to argue with a recording. It's hard to lie about something if it was actually recorded. It seems, almost certain that it was indeed recorded. So, you've got multiple sources saying that it was. The Democrats at this point seem very desperate. They seem like they're in basically damage control panic mode. Now I want to go to another video of Devin Nunes responding to to a Democrat congressman saying that the FISA court knew the dossier was political.
There are Democrats on your committee talking on another channel today who insisted that the FISA court was told of the political nature of this information. Take a listen.
Is there anything inappropriate, do you think, about a partisan political document, the Steele dossier, being used in an application to surveil an associate of a presidential candidate, in this case Carter Page, especially if that fact is not disclosed in the application? Is that inherently wrong, do you think?
Jake, that fact was disclosed. It was disclosed to the FISA court that part of the evidence was from a politically motivated source.
True?
No. I mean, this is things I said earlier. I mean, these guys tell so many lies, you can't keep track of them.
That's not true.
No. The court was not made aware. And I would think that a judge, if the judge knew that, hey, we have an investigation of the Trump campaign, we're going after this Trump campaign advisor, and oh, by the way, Hillary Clinton's campaign paid for all this information. If that did happen, which it didn't, but if that court did know that, the judge would have to be, I think, considered very suspect. But I don't believe that happened at all.
So there it is. It's pretty clear. Devin Nunes saying no, absolutely no. This is not true. The FISA court did not know about the political motivations of Fusion GPS and the fact that Christopher Steele had a anti-Trump bias. He just says quite clearly that's a lie. That's an absolute lie. And the Democrats, as you can see, are clearly in damage control mode at this point, and they are coming out and apparently saying things didn't happen that can be quite easily proven false. Their claims, at least, because these are things that there's a paper trail for. We have, the documents are there, and Devin Nunes is saying, look, we've got the documents, we've seen the documents, they are clearly lying, and hopefully this stuff gets to come out so people can see for themselves how the level of the level of absolute insanity the Democrats will engage in. Now, and speaking of that, I want to go now to a video of MSNBC. So let's look at a little bit of the media response. I want to go to MSNBC calling for basically a revolution, people to take to the streets if Rod Rosenstein is fired. Let's play that video.
Here too, Donnie.
My leg is shaking.
I know. Go. Let it all out.
Here's what's going on here. I don't want to talk about a memo. We've got a dozen instances of clearly the Russians colluding this election with top Trump officials. 2 have already been convicted. We have a president, who clearly is owned by Putin. We have an investigation going. Okay, that's good news. We basically now have a press release that's been put out, that's been twisted and mangled, that now will give this president permission to fire Rosenstein, who will now take over this investigation. Our democracy is under siege. People need to start taking to the streets. This is a dictator. This is not something to analyze anymore.
Yeah.
This is not a good day for Trump.
Yeah.
This is frightening stuff if you are an American. If you're somebody who's 80 years old and sitting at home and you've watched the greatness of this country, you should be terrified. And if you're a 12-year-old and the future is in front of you, this is terrifying. This is not time to analyze and pundit. People, we need a revolution at this point. And I'm not doing TV here, and I'm not going, ooh, crazy Donnie. Well, this is what's going on.
I mean, look at that guy. That guy's just a weasel. That guy looks like a Disney movie villain or something. He's like, oh, my leg is shaking. Oh, kids, we gotta go after these, these evil, Republicans. They're trying to, take over. And oh man, in a year or so, we might not even be here because, Trump, he's clearly Hitler and he's evil. And we gotta take to the streets, guys. I mean, who is this guy? Where do these people come from? I don't even know. And now I want to go to a video of Tucker Carlson being accused of being a Russian agent by Representative Swalwell.
You just said on my air, on my show, you're imperiling our national security. I said, oh, really, Congressman? How am I doing that? Am I going to be arrested for that? Because, I don't know, it seems like the kind of thing a man could be arrested for.
Yeah, these are important times in our history. Either you are supporting those that are undermining the independence of the Department of Justice and the rule of law, or you're standing firm and saying this is wrong. Tucker, I wish you were on my side because I think you know better.
I'm not sure what the hell you're talking about. I only wish
I think you don't like what I'm talking about.
Well, I definitely don't like what you're talking about, but more profoundly, I don't understand it. And when you accuse someone of committing a crime for which people are arrested, why don't you game it out for me? Tell me one thing that I have said that you think makes all Americans, including my children, less safe.
You continue to support the idea that we should give suspects in criminal cases the evidence against them before we ask them any questions. Well, you also believe that there's nothing wrong.
I don't support that. I do think we should give them the benefit of the doubt, as the Constitution requires us to. Call me a liberal. When have I said that I think that we should give evidence to? I'm not even sure what that means. By the way, I think people charged in a criminal case have the right to the evidence against them, don't they?
Do you think?
Wait,
well,
so are you aware of that?
Not when they're being questioned, Tucker. Yeah, Tucker, not when they're being questioned, not when they're under suspicion. Do you think it's a problem that the White House was sent evidence in the Russia investigation? Do you think it's a problem that they were sent evidence in the Russia investigation when they are subjects of the investigation? You don't see a conflict there?
What in the no?
Donald Trump and
maybe I would.
Don
but
McGahn.
in the case of today's memo, what specifically have I espoused that empowers threats to our country?
You're peddling the narrative that the Trump administration is putting out, which also is the Putin narrative, because they're retweeting this with their Russian bots. If you're on the same side as WikiLeaks and Putin,
I wonder, do you perceive
if you're on the same side as
collapse?
WikiLeaks and Putin, you should take a step back and wonder, whose bidding are you really doing?
I don't even know what to say. I don't want to explode on TV, so I'm just going to end this segment now. Let the record reflect
I'll see you next week.
Me of working for a hostile foreign government.
so there you have it. I mean, apparently Tucker Carlson is a Russian agent, and I mean, you know, Keith Olbermann couldn't say it any better.
Scum! Russian scum!
I mean, good old Keith Olbermann, man. I miss good old Keith Olbermann. It's too bad that guy retired. He was grade A entertainment for sure. So there's now all this hubbub about whether or not the White House is going to fire Rosenstein. And as far as I'm concerned, the guy should be fired. He clearly engaged in some activity that was quite inappropriate, signing off on FISA warrants after being, basically appointed by the Trump administration. Clearly some very shady activity, but now I want to go to the White House, a video of the White House spokesman, or a White House spokesman, talking about what the president's plans are for old Rod Rosenstein.
Out front tonight, White House Principal Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah. Raj, thank you for your time tonight. There is a lot of fear in Washington that the president is gearing up to fire the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. As you've heard, Raj, the president was asked about it today, and I want to play again for you what he said.
More likely to fire Rosenstein? Do you still have confidence in him after reading?
You figure that one out.
You figure that one out. That is far from a denial, Raj.
Aaron, thanks a lot for having me on. Look, on the Deputy Attorney General, there's been no change in the president's confidence in the DAG. We continue to expect him to fill his role as the Deputy Attorney General, and we don't expect any changes on that front.
So you saw, Trump said there to the media that, you guys figure this out when asked about, are you going to fire Rosenstein? You guys figure it out. And then the White House spokesman comes out and says, look, we're not going to fire Rosenstein. So what they're doing, I'm sure Trump knows what the political backlash is going to be if it happens. As far as I'm concerned, again, it should. But he probably knows better, so he's probably going to wait it out, play the long game, and there's a lot of leverage. Trump basically has all the leverage at this point. So really allowing this to continue is maybe the best move tactically. It's just insane that we've got this level of corruption in our government for sure. So President Trump came out and he called the FISA abuse disgraceful. And I want to go to a video of President Trump saying that. Let's play that clip.
I think it's terrible. You want to know the truth? I think it's a disgrace. What's going on in this country, I think it's a disgrace. The memo was sent to Congress. It was declassified. Congress will do whatever they're going to do. But I think it's a disgrace what's happening in our country.
Again, Trump is being pretty measured to a degree in his response. Of course, the liberal media says, he's tyrannical and he's about to destroy the free press and we're about to live under a Nazi-like regime. So that's of course what the media is saying. But really, Trump has been pretty careful, I would say, about what he's doing and how he's handling the situation. Some people are definitely not mincing words, and one of them would be Representative Gosar, or Gosar, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, who has basically come out and said that the activity that the Department of Justice and FBI engaged in and the Obama administration was treason, in fact treason. So here is part of his statement. He says, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence Memorandum on the FBI abuse of FISA warrants and targeting a sitting president is not just evidence of incompetence, but clear and convincing evidence of treason. The FBI knowingly took false information, from the Democratic National Committee and the Hillary Clinton campaign, and then used it to smear Donald Trump in order to hurt his campaign. This is third world politics where the official government agencies are used as campaign attack dogs. So some very strong words there from Representative Gosar. So the fallout of this FISA memo has obviously been incredible. You've got, again, just a hyper-partisan split in the view on this whole situation. I will say I'm sure some people on the right are taking it a little bit too far, but definitely I would say the people on the left are really acting in a manner that's quite regrettable because they're indeed, supporting police state tactics. And this is something that every American should care about, regardless of your political affiliation. You should not be okay with the government, the Department of Justice, and the FBI being used as a sort of political apparatus of a particular party to go after the opposing party. I mean, that is just disgusting, as he said, banana republic, third world level stuff, and it is completely not welcome in the United States of America, and I don't see how anyone could not agree with that. But apparently, a lot of people in the media, people on the far left, are definitely making it quite clear that they are indeed okay with this type of activity, as long as it's being used against their opponents, which is very, very disturbing. So now I've got some questions, some outstanding questions that this FISA memo raises. One of them has to do with the FISA judge. The FISA judge who recused himself on the Flynn case. Now, I say a FISA judge because he is one of the judges, one of only a small handful of judges, panel of judges, that oversees the FISA court, presides over the FISA court proceedings, and authorizes FISA warrants. Well, this very judge, Judge Rudolph Contreras, wound up recusing himself on the Michael Flynn case. Now, Michael Flynn, again, was the national security advisor for like a week until he resigned, was basically fired for lying to the vice president about conversations that he had with the Russian ambassador. Well, the reason that the FBI and NSA were able to listen to that conversation that he had with the Russian ambassador in the first place was because, almost certainly, they got a FISA warrant to spy on members of the Trump campaign. Well, again, this judge that was just recused in the Michael Flynn case, he got charged for lying to the FBI, pleaded guilty to it. This judge apparently recused himself, or got recused, which I'll get into here in a second, and that is very questionable, because there's no real good reason that's been put forward as to why he recused himself from the case. And it seems like it may very well be because he could have been the very judge that authorized at least one of the FISA warrants to spy on the Trump team in the first place. So if he authorized the spying, basically, of Michael Flynn, and then was going to be the very judge, the illegitimate, I'll have you spying of Michael Flynn, and then was going to be the very judge presiding over his case, that's a bit suspicious. And now we find out that this judge didn't recuse himself, apparently. He may have actually been removed and was not apparently going to recuse himself. So it's becoming very suspicious. Now, this is from the Washington Examiner. According to Joe DeGeneva, a former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, Contreras was, in fact, removed from the case. DeGeneva revealed the claim during an interview earlier this month on WMAL radio in Washington, D.C., saying, quote, "I learned over the weekend that he, Contreras, did not recuse himself. He was removed from the case." Now, the question for any good reporter at the Washington Post, the alternative universe in D.C., is, why was Judge Contreras removed from the case by either the chief judge or the D.C. Circuit? Have you seen a story written about it? Isn't it interesting how people in the press are not interested why this one judge, who has taken a guilty plea in this case, was removed from the case? And that's very, very suspicious. So you've got, again, a judge who is one of only a handful of judges that preside over the FISA court. This judge recuses himself from the Mike Flynn case, and apparently had to be recused. He had to be removed from the case. This judge, and there was no good reason given for why he had to recuse. So it begs the question, was he in fact the judge that authorized, if not the original FISA application, one of the renewals, one of the 90-day renewals? And that is one of the questions that needs answering, and it could be answered quite easily by the FISA application being, or the FISA applications being declassified, something that needs to happen. Now I want to go to Alexander Downer, who is the Australian diplomat who met with the campaign advisor. I think he was I forget what capacity he was, but George Papadopoulos, he was a lower level volunteer for the Trump campaign. And apparently Papadopoulos met with Alexander Downer, the Australian diplomat, at a London bar. And apparently they talked about possibly getting the Hillary Clinton and DNC and John Podesta emails or something, some such nonsense from the Russians, who apparently, had those emails. Well, it's interesting because, and this is supposedly what started the counterintelligence investigation in 2016, in July. Well, this Downer character is actually under investigation for giving taxpayer money to the Clinton Foundation. So now you've got a corrupt link between this guy and the criminal, the criminal foundation, the Clinton Foundation. And it begs the question. You've got this guy who's now connected to the Clinton Foundation, who was the genesis of the counterintelligence, the FBI counterintelligence investigation on Team Trump in July 2016. Was that meeting a sting? Was that meeting possibly set up somehow? I think it very well may have been. And also along those same lines, was the Trump Tower meeting, the meeting with the Russian lawyer Veselnitskaya or something like that? I forget her first name. Natalia Veselnitskaya, I believe her name was. Was that meeting a setup? The meeting between her and Trump Jr. To talk about Clinton emails. Now, it's come out now that this Russian lawyer, Veselnitskaya, has links with Fusion GPS. So you've got the Russian lawyer who has links to Fusion GPS. You've got the Australian diplomat who has links to the Clinton Foundation. And all of this is extremely shady. And what needs to happen is we need to get to the bottom of this, and we need to find out whether or not those meetings were completely organic or whether they were setups, whether they were stings, which obviously I believe they were both setups, or at least the meeting with the Russian lawyer was indeed a setup. So another thing that needs to happen is we need to get a hold of Fusion GPS's bank records. We need to be able to see who they paid and who they were paid by. We're going to find out that they gave money to certain media organizations, and we're going to find out that they got paid by some very interesting individuals, one of which would be an organization called Obama for America, which, as the name implies, is a organization that is run by Obama, or it may not be directly run by Obama, but I believe it's a PAC, a political action committee, or something of the sort, or some sort of fundraising organization affiliated with Barack Obama. Now, this organization, Obama for America, gave a bunch of money right around the time Fusion GPS was doing its dirty dossier work. Obama for America gave a bunch of money to Perkins Coie, which is the very same law firm that paid Fusion GPS. The very same law firm that is connected to Hillary Clinton. The law firm that the Hillary Clinton campaign and the DNC paid as their intermediary, their middleman, to give the money to Fusion GPS to pay for the dirty dossier and all this stuff. Well, again, as I said, Obama for America gave them a bunch of money right around that same time. And we need to see where that money that they give to Perkins Coie went to, because if it indeed went to Fusion GPS, then that means that good old Obama himself was, at least indirectly, quote unquote, giving money to Fusion GPS to fund this said opposition research, which would again be a huge scandal in and of itself. Well, now it seems that Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein has threatened possibly congressional oversight. Now, this is a story from Zero Hedge. Rod Rosenstein reportedly threatened Nunes House Intel members with subpoena, report says. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein threatened to subpoena the, quote, texts and messages of House Intel Committee Chairman Devin Nunes and other members of Congress, according to legal analyst Greg Jarrett. saying, quote, "I can tell you, a congressional source tells me that Rod Rosenstein, in a meeting 3 weeks ago, threatened Chairman Nunes and members of Congress he was going to subpoena their texts and messages because he was tired of dealing with the Intel Committee. That's threats and intimidation and retaliation, and I'll have you know, possibly, yeah, I mean, that shows intent to obstruct justice. I mean, they talk all day about, you know, Trump obstructing justice, of which he has obstructed zero justice, and of which he's colluded with zero Russians. You've got the Democrats and all them colluding with the Russians and attempting to obstruct justice. And this is a clear example of it. Old Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, that authorized continued applications to spy on FISA applications to spy on Carter Page and potentially others. You've got this guy who doesn't want all this stuff coming to light, of course, because he's one of the main people that's implicated. And now he is apparently coming out and threatening the very people that are overseeing him. The duly elected members of Congress, whose job it is to oversee them, he is now apparently threatening them, or was apparently threatening them, to subpoena their text and messages because he was tired of dealing with them. Yeah, I bet you're tired of dealing with them because, again, you're one of the main swamp creatures. Well, now I want to go to a report by Sarah Carter where she said that apparently Andrew McCabe, the deputy director of the FBI, who now had to step down, may have altered 302s about potentially about the Flynn meeting. So 302s are basically the witness testimony. So when FBI agents interview a witness, they take that testimony and then they wind up filing it officially. Well, those are considered 302s. Well, apparently Andrew McCabe had some of these FBI agents, or maybe a particular FBI agent, I'm looking at you, Peter Strzok, change some of these 302s, actually alter them, which is very shady, very suspicious, very illegitimate, you know, illegal, I'm sure. And it seems that it may have actually been the testimony by none other than Michael Flynn. Now remember, Peter Strzok, this super corrupt FBI agent who hated Trump, was setting up an insurance policy and started and basically was one of the main agents heading up the counterintelligence investigation. This guy was the very agent, among others, who interviewed Mike Flynn about his conversations with the Russian ambassador. Well, it may very well have been that testimony that was ordered to be altered by Andrew McCabe himself. And evidence I have for this is a video by Catherine Herridge on Fox in December 2017, where she said that sources were saying FBI agents thought Flynn had actually told the truth in that interview. Let's go to that video.
Catherine, earlier on Harris's show, you were talking about how disciplined Michael Flynn has been, obviously in a 33-year career in the military, showing that today in terms of his posture. I'm curious if you had any indication on a lack of discipline when it comes to actually talking to the FBI and now having to admit that he lied about it.
What I would say, having covered this now for the better part of a year, is that when you speak to people who are close to Flynn, they talk about this period leading up to Election Day and then in the transition period as almost overwhelmed with the amount of information that was coming at them, a very chaotic period, a period where they were not remembering events easily because they were so overwhelmed. And my colleague Brett Baer received some information earlier today from a source who has knowledge of FBI Director Comey's testimony to Congress earlier this year, that his agents felt that Flynn hadn't deliberately misled them, but he was somehow mistaken in his conversation. So what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is that in the spring of this year, Comey's agents felt Flynn had made a mistake. He was overwhelmed, he was confused, he couldn't remember the events. But when Special Robert Mueller came in and his team went through the information, perhaps additional evidence, they concluded something very different, that there was a deliberate effort to do so. But when you talk to people close to Flynn, I think one of the bottom lines today is that after a year of the financial strain and the emotional strain and looking at 3 more years of litigation, this ultimately broke him. And he felt the only option really for himself and his family was to make a deal. And that is sometimes the case once you get sort of in that sweet spot with a government investigation.
So she says quite clearly that some of the FBI agents who were familiar with it, or who potentially even interviewed Mike Flynn or were there for the interview, thought that he actually was simply, misremembering certain details about the conversation. Again, it was a very hectic period, and as I'm almost certain, he didn't think he actually didn't do anything wrong, so he's just honestly answering these questions, not knowing that they're going to take every single word he's saying and look for any little discrepancy. Well, it seems that even in that situation, they felt like he was basically telling the truth, that he may have misremembered certain details. Well, it seems like Andrew McCabe may have altered those 302s and made them seem even worse, potentially, than they actually were, to be able to implicate Mike Flynn and say that he actually lied to the FBI, which, again, is what he is being charged with. Not colluding with any Russians, not anything of the sort. No, lying to the FBI, and it seems now it may have been under completely false pretenses. Well, now, good old Andrew McCabe. I want to finish with him by just saying that Andrew McCabe is in a bit of an interesting predicament. He has actually stepped down from the FBI. He's been basically forced to resign, and he's on what's called terminal leave. So basically this guy had enough sick time or vacation time saved up that he was able to go on terminal leave, and he's basically not working as the deputy director of the FBI, but he is basically just on vacation until he because he was going to step down in March. He was going to step down in March. So he was basically forced to technically kind of resign before that. Now, the reason is because of the memo that came out. The FBI Director Christopher Wray saw the memo, said it shocked him to his core, and then right after that, McCabe is forced to resign. Well, the interesting thing about McCabe's predicament, again, because of the terminal leave or whatever it is that he's on, he actually is within 5 weeks of retiring with a full pension. Now, the thing about it is, under the circumstance that he's on now, on vacation mode, basically, if he rides that out, he can actually retire still with his full pension. Well, what I think is going to happen is they're going to hang this pension over his head, and they're going to drag him into court because he still technically has to, if he's called to testify, before Congress or whatever, he still has to because he's technically still a government employee. But he could refuse, but then the thing is, he'd get fired. And if he gets fired, bye-bye pension, or at least, I'm not sure that he would at least get the full pension. I think he would still maybe get some of it, or I'm not sure what the full situation is there. But to get his full pension, I'm pretty sure he has to actually ride out the rest of these 5 weeks. And within this crucial 5 or 4 week period of time, they need to get McCabe in there, and they need to get him to testify, and they need to squeeze every little bit of information they can out of him, and I'm sure that's probably what you're going to see. So don't be surprised if you see old McCabe singing like a canary here in the near future. Now, the last question I have about this, the FISA application that I want to detail in this video, at least. I mean, the insanity is never ending when it comes to this whole situation. I've been literally obsessed with this for the last month or so. It's just crazy. We need to see the FISA applications. We need to see who it was that signed these FISA applications, and we need to see the judges that approved them in some cases, because we need to find out if this Judge Contreras was in fact one of the judges that approved one of these FISA applications. If that's the case, that is bombshell. And finally, did FBI super agent Peter Strzok, was he the agent that signed off on some of these FISA applications? This is crucial because these FISA applications, as we know now, were based on the dossier. That's bad enough. But if they were brought forward by this agent who was working hand in glove with Fusion GPS, who had a clear anti-Trump bias, who wanted to set up some sort of insurance policy against the guy. If this was the agent who signed, this is the agent who was the head agent of the counterintelligence investigation, investigating Trump. He was a member of Mueller's special counsel until these texts came out and Mueller was forced to fire him. Now, if he was the guy who signed off on these FISA applications, that beyond a shadow of a doubt makes this the fruit of the poisonous tree, and that means that any of the information that was gained from any of these FISA applications is null and void, because under the fruit of the poisonous tree, even if you come up with criminal activity, which they haven't, aside from lying to the FBI, I mean, what Mickey Mouse level stuff, they haven't come up with any kind of crimes. And so even if they did, they wouldn't be able to use it in a court of law under the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine, which to me this clearly falls under. I mean, good God, you got to give me a break. So you've just got layers and layers of corruption going on here. It's like an onion of deep state swampery, and you just never get to the end of it. And there are just devastating implications in this memo, and you see it's so horrible to see the Democrats and the media defending this type of absolutely tyrannical deep state behavior. And let me tell you, Chuck Schumer came out and said that the Republicans will rue the day that they voted for the tax cut bill to give more, Americans more of their own money. No. Let me tell you who's going to rue the day. The Democrats and the media are going to rue the day that they supported this type of tyrannical police state behavior, and this is going to hang over their heads 1,000 times heavier than Watergate ever hung over the heads of the Republicans, as it should have. So, with that, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was enlightening. I hope you were able to learn some things that you didn't know before. And again, I just hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please subscribe. Please, comment. Just share the video. Let your friends see it. Show it to your liberal friends. Let them lose their minds. If you want to join me on social media, I will put up my Twitter and my Gab accounts in the description below, and I will also have available the podcast version, which I'll have on SoundCloud. So I'll have the link to that available too. So with that, again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a wonderful day, and may the force be with you.